Hi, everyone. Good morning or good afternoon now that it's noon. Welcome to the Creative Pathways Podcast Talk. This was formerly known as the E4 Youth Virtual Talks, but we have rebranded to call it the E4 Youth Creative Pathways Talks. The reason we decided to call it the Creative Pathways Talks is that we know that two journeys are never the same, but we know that there are always different universal pathways that people can take in order to learn something. And so we want to establish this series of podcasts that will perform live for you guys as a way for creative technology professionals to sort of talk about their experience and the pathways they took to get into the creative field, as well as mention emerging leaders in E4 Youth Creative Academy Department to talk about the ways that they are coming up into the creative field as well. And this story will serve as a library of stories for all of our future E4 Youth people, our E4 Youth people right now, so that we can inspire others to take on their full creative potential. So I'm your host, Jaleisha Bass. It's great to see you all here. I'm a senior at the University of Texas, and I'm a digital docent here at E4 Youth. And today, our first talk will be with Leen, who was born in Mexico City. She has embraced her bicultural experience throughout her advertising career of 20 years with a passion for culture and a career founded in Hispanic advertising. She has turned her attention to bring the marketing and culture diversity to the general market. After a career in account leadership on the agency side, she is taking on a new career path in diversity, equity, and inclusion. And Anna's new role as Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion at Omnicom, she's able to apply her experience to bring to life Omnicom's vision for a future in a workforce that is breaking barriers and setting the bar for the industry. In addition to her day job, Anna serves as a Director of Partnerships for ADCOLOR, an organization that champions diversity and inclusion in creative industries, where she observes projects and relationships with both vendors and sponsored partners. So welcome to the screen, Leen.
Hi, Jaleisha.
Hi, how are you doing?
I'm good. You know, it's sunny, it's beautiful. We're here in Austin, Texas. Can't be mad.
I love that. What have you been up to during this pandemic? It's been rough out here for all of us.
Yeah, well, you know, just taking more walks, trying to be, look at the positive side. It's nice to run into my kids in the middle of the day instead of being stuck in an office. So just trying to make the most of it.
I feel that. I love that for you. Taking walks is super good. Being cooped up in the house is really difficult.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll pass it on to you so that you can tell everybody a little bit more about yourself.
Awesome. Sounds great. Yeah, I love the new rebrand, Creative Pathways. I certainly have a strange journey that I think, is fun to share, and I'm happy to have you guys here so that I can tell it to you. It starts in a bit of an odd place. I think Jaleisha mentioned briefly that I was born in Mexico City. And I was trying to find a picture. I was like, well, what can I show them that's like, oh, me as a little girl in Mexico? And instead I found this really awkward family photo of us at the Pyramid of the Sun right outside of Mexico City. I'm the super awkward one in the middle with the hair off to the side. It was, the late 80s, people, give me a break. Anyways, I was born in Mexico City, and my parents moved to the US when I was actually very young. And it didn't really feel odd to me. They all spoke Spanish to me at home, and I went to school in English, but everything was fine until, it's about middle school, maybe, and I start to realize that my house and my friends' houses are real different. At my house, we're eating enchiladas, we're eating flautas, we're eating pollo con mole. My mom listens to Luis Miguel. We say hello with a kiss on the cheek. At my friend's house, we get peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. They listen to Bon Jovi. You shake hands. There's no kissing on the cheek. That's weird. And I started to realize that I did have this kind of duality, but I always kind of enjoyed it. Like, there were certainly moments growing up where I was like, okay, look at me, right? I'm blonde, I'm blue-eyed, I go out in a crowd, I speak English. Nobody in their right mind is going to be like, oh, look at that Mexican girl. But I felt very much that way inside. And when I hung out with my friends who spoke Spanish and who were from Mexico, I wanted to feel like I was just as Mexican as them. And when I hung out with my American friends, I wanted to feel like I was just as American as them. And it was always a little bit tricky. And I felt like, it was just part of who I was. And I was so excited when I found how I could really use this unique experience to build a career off of. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about how that happened. And it actually starts with Pepto, which you might be thinking to yourself, did you have a stomach ache? No, it was a Pepto-Bismol Billboard. And it's important that you know that, because the billboard and the headline on it is what really triggered me to go into advertising. So the Pepto-Bismol Billboard, this isn't the same billboard that I saw. It's just for storytelling purposes. The one I saw said, "Sana, sana, colita de rana." It is the beginning of a song that you sing in Spanish, especially if you're from Mexico, when somebody gets hurt. So in English, colita de rana means frog's tail. But in Spanish, it's part of a song that you sing if you get hurt. You kind of rub your little elbow where you fell and you say, "Sana, sana, colita de rana. Si no sana hoy, sanará mañana." And the billboard had a Pepto bottle and it said, "Sana, sana, colita de rana." And I thought, wow, somebody who grew up in the culture, speaks the language, is probably, understands that nuance, put that billboard together. It's not just a translation. It's not just something that they slapped up there because they're like, oh, there's plenty of Spanish speakers here in this market. We should say something to them. It felt truly like they tried. And I was like, I could do that. Like, I grew up in this world where I've got the duality of it. I understand the cultures. I think that's super cool. I would love to communicate to people that way. And so I started to explore. I was like, okay, who does that? I started out as an international business major. I graduated from Trinity University in San Antonio, Texas. And I didn't really know what I wanted to do with it. I was like, I speak Spanish. I minored in French. I was like, languages. I'll do something with languages. And then when I saw this billboard, it became clear. I was going to do Hispanic marketing. So I started to ask around. I was like, okay, who does Hispanic marketing in San Antonio? And I found an agency. And it took a couple of interviews, but I finally got in, and I had never felt more at home. I was surrounded by other Latinos and Latinas. We spoke Spanish at work. We were creating these awesome ads. It was a great way for me to not just use my personal experience, but to really dive into the culture and to really understand what is behind an ad, all of the insights, the strategy, the research that goes into it. My role at the agency was as an account coordinator. So I started out in account leadership. And that's what I've done most of my career. So really working with clients and all of the various teams at an agency to figure out, how we sell our ideas into a client. And I worked at LatinWorks here in Austin, Texas. They won Agency of the Year while I was there. It was, like I said, an awesome time. Over the years, though, again, I've been in advertising for like 20 years. So it went from Hispanic marketing being, abuelitas and family dinners. And, we got clients asking us all the time, what's Hispanic about it? And you'd have to like give them some real overt stereotypical reason why it was a Hispanic ad. You'd be like, well, look, there's abuelita sitting at the table, people here in the US, Americans don't have that, abuelita's a Mexican thing, or, they're eating tamales, or there's a piñata. Like, you always had to give some sort of awful stereotypical reason why it was Hispanic. But at the time, that's all people understood. Taking it 20 years later, it is so different. Right now, Hispanic, Black, all the multicultural agencies are they're part of the mainstream. I mean, I don't know how many of you have seen this Cheetos ad. I pulled this one because I see it on TV all the time. But it's Bad Bunny, Deja tu huella Cheetos ad, and it's running on English television. 20 years ago, that was unheard of. You only ran on Telemundo, you ran on Univision, you had your Spanish language publications, and now it's huge. So that opened up a new door. Then GSD&M called and said, we are going to build out our multicultural capabilities here at GSD&M. And I was like, awesome, that is a great idea, because, it's mainstream now, and you guys are a great agency here in Austin. You should absolutely be doing that. So I rolled into GSD&M like freaking Celia Cruz, ready to do my thing. I was like, we're going to have a great time. I'm going to show y'all all these awesome insights. We're going to build some great work. And I rolled in super excited, and I got some looks like, okay, I guess we could do multicultural advertising. I don't really know what that is, and I guess I could sell it to my client. But it was a great idea, and I was so excited about it. And they really made it, a priority at the agency. But what I realized, and I feel bad putting it on this poor little girl's face too much longer, but what I realized is that I was now at an agency where not everyone was like me. And I hadn't had that experience in my career. And that led me to really spend some time with diversity, equity, and inclusion. Because I was like, it's not like I ever felt excluded or like, GSD&M didn't try to be more diverse or equitable. They were all of those things. But I realized that somebody had to be kind of pushing that forward and continuing those conversations and creating the programs and things that were going to build a more diverse, a more equitable, and a more inclusive environment. And it became my passion project. I like to say that DE&I is my love language, because it got me so excited. It gets me excited now to talk about it. And really, when it comes to diversity, equity, and inclusion, defining each of those is important. Diversity is having representation of various identities and differences, whether that's ethnicity, whether that's religion, whether that's gender, all of the things. You want to make sure that you have a really diverse group of people, and that it's equitable, that everybody has a fair chance to have the opportunities, access to training and development, that they're all treated fairly, they're all paid fairly. And inclusion, and that's more of a sense of belonging, really creating a culture at the agency or at your organization where people really feel respected and valued regardless of who they are and where they came from. So I started to work on that, and then I started to look for other ways to really spread that diversity, equity, inclusion love. So that led me to ADCOLOR, which is an organization that I work with as Director of Partnerships. They really champion diversity, equity, inclusion in creative spaces, including tech. So tech has also become a very creative space, as you guys at E4 Youth know. E4 Youth, which is mentioned here, you will definitely know that I love this organization so much. So Shadow the Pros program, any way I could give back to E4 Youth, happy to do it. I also started an ad club at Houston Tillotson, the local HBCU here in Austin, Texas. So anything I could do to bring more talent of color to the industry, I was just all for it. And I wanted to do it all the time. And after a while, I left GSD&M to really kind of do that full time. So I became director of diversity, equity, inclusion at Omnicom, which is a company that owns tens of thousands of agencies around the world, and director of partnerships at ADCOLOR. And that has really been just an amazing journey for me. And I learned a few things along the way that I wanted to share with you guys. So top 5 things. Bringing your whole self to work is critical to your success and happiness. And I realized that, kind of, like I said, going from a place where everyone was like me to a place where I was one of a few, I loved being able to be myself. And I spoke Spanish with the few people that spoke Spanish. I, would drop in directly translated sayings that didn't make sense to anybody else. When they asked me what my first concert was in a meeting as an icebreaker, I told them the truth. It was Timbiriche, which is like this little kind of kid band that from Mexico. So I didn't hide it, and that was important. And I say that to those young folks who are here, so that you know that that is an important thing that you should vet when you're looking for a career. You want to be able to be at a place where you can truly bring your whole self to the table. Also, being valuable is different. I mean, being different is valuable. So do not hide that. If you are interviewing, if you are putting something on your resume, you talk about how unique and interesting and different you are. And right now, especially, like, it is super valuable. People want diversity. So bring that front and center, whatever's different and unique about you. Thank you, Renato, for giving me my Timbiriche shout out. Passion projects bring inspiration when the day-to-day work doesn't. And that I found when, I had doing great work for amazing clients, working on Pizza Hut. But what really filled my heart was what I was doing on ADCOLOR, what I was doing with E4 Youth, what I was doing with Houston Tillotson. And I found that it was important for me to be able to do both, because it really just did something different for me. And so consider that, like, if there's something that you really love, it doesn't mean you can't do it just because you have a day job. The fourth thing, real advancements in diversity, equity, and inclusion might take a while. Find communities to help fill the gaps in the meantime. And I say that to say that, ADCOLOR is a great place to find community. If you are a young, creative talent of color, find other communities. If you don't see it at your agency, there are absolutely a ton of other creatives who are, in organizations or other, like E4 Youth or whatever it is, where you can find other people like you. And then the last one, and this is important to me, there is more than one seat at the table. Be sure to make room for others. And we talk about this, you hear all the time in DE&I, I want a seat at the table. And sometimes you find yourself fighting so hard for that seat that you forget that there isn't just one seat. Once you get there, be like, all right, I'm here, and now we're going to make room for my friends, because there shouldn't be just one diverse person at the table. The whole group should be invited. And I think rising up and reaching back, which is our mantra at ADCOLOR, is hugely important. And even though you're young in your career, be mindful of that. It is never too early to reach back while you're rising up. And I spoke really fast, and I knew I was going to end early. So Jaleisha, what didn't I talk about? Or do we have any questions? Anything else I should mention?
Yeah, for sure. So if y'all have any questions, now is the time to start thinking them up and putting them into the comment section for honest answer. But I do have a question. I want to ask you, how do you think young creatives can sort of use LinkedIn as a way to sort of get into those communities that you were talking about?
So you can absolutely look them up. Again, I'm going to tout my own organization, ADCOLOR, but find ADCOLOR on LinkedIn. Look up other just, diverse creative organizations. There's Afrotech for your digital folks. There are just Google them and then find them on LinkedIn. They're looking for you. Trust me, they want you to be a part of the community. And a lot of them have events, conferences, things like that. And right now, everything is digital, which is such a beautiful time because you don't have to pay $1,000 conference ticket. You just go online and you get, all of the amazing benefits of hearing this inspirational, organization put some great stuff together. So.
Right. And do you think they could add you on LinkedIn as well?
Yes, please add me. Please add me. And, hit me up if you're like looking for something. I know a few people. I'm happy to connect y'all. And, like I said, put your diversity front and center on your LinkedIn profiles. Don't be afraid to do that because I can tell you right now, I work with a lot of clients who are straight up just like, how do I go on LinkedIn and find diverse creatives or whatever. And oftentimes we were always kind of told to kind of hide that it shouldn't matter, but it does matter. And right now it benefits the talent of color. So don't be afraid to put it front and center.
Mm-hmm. And I know sometimes a lot of students of color, whenever they're first getting into the field, they sometimes feel imposter syndrome. And I just want to know if you've ever had that feeling and how do you deal with that when you're first entering the industry?
Well, yeah, for sure. Like I said, especially because I always felt kind of not fully one or the other. And you just got to kind of remind yourself that, you can be fully you and you don't need to worry about that. People are going to take it or leave it. So.
I love that. And what did that look like in your experience?
Well, like I said, kind of walking into GSD&M and, trying to, initially I was like, okay, well, I need to feel very professional and just, prove that I'm as smart as everyone else, even though I wasn't sure you kind of feel like the Hispanic advertising or the multicultural advertising field maybe isn't as on par with general market. That's the line that they give you. It's like, oh, we're like the subpar marketing groups. And that's a bunch of BS. And I had to constantly remind myself that I had all the same skills and at the same level as everybody else did. And try to bring that to the table.
For sure. We'll take our first question from Lily. She said, what are the most important lessons you've learned about advertising?
Ooh, advertising is such a big space. Important lesson that I've learned about advertising, authenticity matters, especially nowadays. The audience, the people that are watching your ads, they're no fools. They know that you're selling to them and they can do research on a brand in 2 seconds. And they know that if you really mean what you're saying or you don't. And right now, a lot of the social justice efforts coming forward from brands and things, and all of a sudden they are coming forward talking about, Black Lives Matter or whatever the case is. People will know if you mean it or if you don't. And that goes for any sort of selling point. So I think it's important to really make sure that in advertising that you're truly authentic and that you guide your clients that way. Kind of call them out if they are trying to push for any sort of messaging or things that they can't really back up. People will call them out.
Awesome. Carl said, what are some key mentors that helped you get into the ad business? And can you talk about how they helped you?
Sure. So let's talk a little bit about how I got my first job in advertising, because I was able, I've had a lot of women in my life, which have really kind of helped me out. And they were really kind of pushing me forward throughout my career. I landed my first job in advertising when I was bartending. And I was serving drinks to this one table. And I don't know why all my advertising stories involve children's songs in Spanish, but they do. And so I was serving drinks to this table, and the ladies at the table start singing children's song in Spanish. They're singing Víbora, víbora de la mar, de la mar. Anyways, the song goes on, and I chime in, and they're looking at me. They're like, "Oh my gosh, who are you? Why do you know that song?" Again, blonde hair, blue eyes. And so I explained, and she was like, "You need to come work for me. Just come and interview." And I did, and I got the job. And this woman helped kind of push me forward in my career, to kind of just throw me in. She trusted me. She knew I could do a good job. And it was awesome because that was exactly everything that I wanted to do. As far as like the one who has most impacted my life is Tiffany R. Warren, founder of ADCOLOR. She is someone who is selfless. She is someone who is the epitome of reaching back. And she helped me by really reinforcing what I thought I knew about myself, which was that I had specific skills and talents, and I could, use them in a different way, which was through diversity, equity, inclusion. She's the one that kind of pulled me out of the ad agency life and into diversity, equity, and inclusion. And she made me feel like I could do that, even though I had no experience in the field. And that was huge for me.
Right. And then our next question comes from Tin. He said, what skills do you rely on the most during the advertising industry, and what skills can students develop now so they can be prepared for the future?
So in my role as account leader, really making sure that you are managing up is huge. So I know it sounds like a really boring skill, but it's a super important skill. So setting expectations, making sure that everybody knows what they're supposed to be doing. And even from a creative standpoint, you're going to have deadlines. You're going to have people that expect different things of you. So make sure that you're communicating that. Don't be late. Like really stay as organized as you can, because communicating constantly with your boss and setting expectations with them can really help you get to the next level, because they're going to trust you. They're going to know that they can rely on you. And that's huge.
I definitely agree. Dealing with time management has been the struggle, especially during COVID. Like, I feel like now I'm more likely to be late to a meeting than I am in person.
I know, it's absolutely true. And not just that, but like I feel like, again, because time is just so strange, and due dates, what day is it even? I don't know. And when do you need this by? Who knows? But being the one to proactively make sure to set expectations, that takes you to the next level. It sounds like something so simple, but a lot of people don't do it.
Mm-hmm. You're definitely right. The next question comes from Ricardo. He said, during an interview, how can I promote my Hispanic knowledge to the agency's benefit?
So certainly from a language standpoint, if you speak Spanish, that's great. And then from a cultural standpoint, depending on what role you're looking for, just being familiar with a different culture, talking about, just how that has impacted your life and the way you see things is important too. It doesn't always have to be something that overtly makes its way into the work. Talk about how being Hispanic affects the way that you see things and how you bring your work to life. And some of that is what agencies are looking for. They're looking for different perspectives. They don't want the same thinking going into every assignment. So less about, what do you know about geography and whatever. Obviously, I know that's not what you meant, but how does being Hispanic or your knowledge of the culture affect how you do your work?
All right. I think that's something really important to bring to the table whenever you're having these conversations with potential employers.
Mm-hmm.
Our next question comes from Karina, and she said, what recent projects have you been working on?
Oh, goodness. So from an Omnicom standpoint, like many other agency holding companies, diversity, equity, and inclusion has really just been pushed to the forefront of their efforts across all of their agency networks. So I've been working a lot on establishing some concrete programs to put across the Omnicom agencies, as well as just accountability. And that's huge. So how do we measure diversity, equity, and inclusion in an agency to make sure that we're really making progress? And then for ADCOLOR, I'm working on our next big event. So we have some really great Black History Month content that's going to be airing in February. And then we also have the announcement of ADCOLOR in music. So the music industry folks will also be able to benefit from the magic of ADCOLOR. So if you don't already follow ADCOLOR, do it. And you can see some of the great work that we're putting out there. And that's it. You know, it's been interesting not having like a specific brand to work on, but I feel like now I'm really working on the talent that kind of fuels that work and making sure that they are able to really maximize their potential when they're putting that work into the brands. And that's fun too.
That's awesome. I love that. I love that y'all are getting into music.
Mm-hmm.
This should be interesting. I want to see it.
Yeah.
Awesome. And then we have a next question from Cynthia. She said, how do you maintain work-life balance as a director in multiple places?
That might be a question for someone else. Just kidding. No, I do actually maintain a relatively good work-life balance, but you have to create barriers, right? You have to decide, okay, I'm going to stop what I'm doing right now to go take that walk that I talked about, or to go say hi to my kids in the kitchen. It's easy to feel like everything is urgent and everything needs to happen now. But if you pause and really think about it, you're like, I can take an hour out of my day, or I can take 5 minutes, and the world isn't going to come to an end. And the good thing is, COVID has given us a little bit of flexibility. We're not in offices. I am in my house. I can take a few minutes for myself, and it's important to do that. I also am just kind of straight up honest with folks at work, and I feel like more and more organizations are welcoming that honesty. So hopefully you find yourself in a place that encourages work-life balance.
All right, awesome. And then we're also going to take a question from Christy. She said, what advice would you offer to an entry-level professional entering the industry?
I would advise you that right now everything is probably feeling super competitive, and like it's hard to find a really great job. So finding networks that help propel you forward, finding stages that give you the opportunity to shine is important. So whether that is participating in, virtual conversations where you are able to meet people that you normally wouldn't. Again, I'm thinking of even things like this, where you're hearing from someone who is a professional, kind of advanced in their career, and they're seeing your name. You can reach out to them on LinkedIn. Like, get creative with how you network and connect with people, because I've always said that getting a job is about who you know, and keeping a job is about what you know. So the more you can network, the better, and find creative ways to do so. In a virtual world, go to those virtual workshops, go to the things where you can find an excuse to meet somebody who does what you want to do, and connect with them.
I love that. I think you're totally right. And Chelsea also had a question about interviewing as well. She said, when you interview with a potential creative company, what is an important question to ask an employer as it relates to diversity in the workplace as a young minority creative?
You know what? More and more companies are expecting that question. So ask them straight up. Be like, what sort of diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts do you have here at the agency? And see how they answer you. If they are not prepared, if they look at you with a blank stare, then they have not thought about it, and it is probably not a priority. And I would just straight up ask them, be like, what sort of diversity, equity, inclusion efforts do you have in the workplace? And their answer will be hugely telling.
And what do we do if they aren't doing anything? Like, should we just dip, or should we try it out? Or
no, I mean, I think you can definitely try it out. I would just kind of gauge for, their openness. Again, they maybe don't have to answer with a full-on 12-step plan, but if they're like, I don't even know what you're talking about, depending on the agency, depending on where you're going to work, but you're going to get a vibe, and I would just trust your gut. is what I will say. So don't be afraid to ask the overt question about what they're doing. It's top of mind for a lot of agencies. My guess is a lot of them will have a direct answer, but if they don't, just go with your gut. I would just ask them straight up.
Let's see. And what do you think we should do? Like, if we go into there and you you're not like really like feeling like the place, or you like the diversity is just not there, and it's just like this is kind of uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, do you just like leave? Like, is that allowed, or is it like not professional to quit because you feel some type of way?
No, it's absolutely allowed. I will say that, I think there's probably a lot of agencies and organizations that would love to be given a second chance, or at least be given that feedback. But one of the biggest topics that we discuss is retention, because hiring creatives of color is not hard. Keeping them is the hard part, because once they get there, if your organization doesn't have the culture to kind of support that inclusion, or if they're not, given the same, ability to express themselves or the same opportunities, people are going to get tired of it and they're just going to bail. So don't be afraid to bail. But if you feel like it's worth giving them a second chance, bring it up. Bring it up to your boss, or bring it up to someone in a leadership position, and they may just not be aware. Oftentimes, it's not, people always feel like when they're called out that we're calling them, racist or whatever. I'm not saying that. I remember a few times where I'd be like at a new business pitch and I'm looking at all of the storyboards and seeing all of the white faces on there, and I'd be like, we're going to throw in maybe some diversity in these storyboards. And I'm not calling anybody anything, but everyone would get real freaked out. And I think that people sometimes just don't realize. So don't be afraid to call them out if you think it's worth it, but also totally okay to bail.
All right, but that's good to hear. And speaking of administrative roles, 10 asks, what are some pros and cons of being in an administrative role now?
That is a great question, Tin. And I think about that a lot because, like I said, I do kind of miss being like in the weeds of the creative process and being part of that team that's putting that ad together. So the con is that you kind of are a few steps removed from the advertising work that is being done. I would say a pro is that you get kind of this broader picture, and you're able to impact the culture of the agencies, which again, for me, has always been a passion project, my love language. So it's a personal pro for me to have this administrative role, but the con is I absolutely miss just being in the weeds of advertising.
All right, awesome. Is there any closing remarks or advice that you want to give to our young people before we wrap up today?
The last piece of advice I'll give you is be yourself, put that forward. Diversity is valuable. Reach out to me. I will help you connect with whoever I can, because who you know is important. So continue to go out there and whatever you need, I'm here.
All right, awesome. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you coming on to talk to us today. You gave a lot of really great nuggets for our artists and our students, and for me as well. I had to write some down in my notes or whatever. So I really appreciate you. And thank you for coming and talk with us.
Thank you all.
Yeah, you're good. And then as for everyone else in the crowd, we'll be doing these talks every week at noon on Wednesdays. So you can tune in next week for more creative talks just like the ones we had today. And if you are also interested in, being more immersed into getting into these different pathways, you can come and work with E4 Youth in the CLA program, which is the Creative Leadership Academy, where we'll train up students like you guys, whether you're in high school or in college, to be in job positions like the ones that Anna is in today. So thank you guys so much, and we'll see you later. Bye.